Welcome into the Wrestle Room podcast. I am your host, Vince McKee, and we're going to go ahead and bring in my co-host here in a few moments, Mike Rodgers. This is a fun venture that me and Mike have talked about for quite some time, in regards to wrestling conspiracies, some urban legends, things of that nature. And really, for quite a long time, me and Mike have had this idea for a podcast. Again, I am Vince McKee. Let me bring in the man of the hour right now, Mike Rodgers. How's it going, Mike?
Pretty good. Can you hear me, Vince?
Loud and clear.
All right. So things are going very well. Very excited to be doing this podcast with you. I think you were alluding to it. It's been a long time coming, but I'm glad we're finally able to find some time to get on these really exciting topics.
Yes, I can't wait. Mike bought some new equipment for the computer, and that makes things even more fun, I think, for both of us today. So here's the thing, though. Full disclosure, guys, Mike, one of my closest friends in this world, cannot wait for your wedding. We're going to talk about wrestling here in a second, man. But I just want to tell you, we are T minus, I think, about 34 days, give or take. You ready for it?
Oh, yeah. I'm well prepared. Ashlyn has put in all the work, so it's been easy for me.
It's an honest
uh,
man right there, folks.
Hey, I mean, let's be real. No one's gonna believe that I actually, you know, decided on the colors or um, sat down and looked at different placemats and table covers. So I'm just keeping it real.
Listen, brother, I've been to enough weddings. I could tell you the things that people remember the most, quite frankly, is the food. Okay. Was the food good? And the music. So, and obviously, if the bride's beautiful, but I mean, everyone's going to say she's beautiful regardless. Like, Ashlyn doesn't even have to worry about that. First of all, she's a natural beauty. I'll just say it. But number two, like, she will be radiant. So that's not a problem. But really, the two big things, I'm just telling you, food and entertainment. So as long as you guys nail those two down, you'll be good to go. Okay, sound good?
Hey, I hear you loud and clear.
All right. Like I said, I think I might have texted you yesterday or Saturday. Me and Emily have already booked our room at the hotel, and yeah, I mean, we are ready for the night away and to celebrate your wedding. So everybody cluing in here though, listening in today. Again, guys, this is stuff. Me and Mike are old school wrestling fans. I know I watch a lot of the new stuff, but really old school beyond belief. Certainly with the WWE Network, it makes a lot of those things very easy to go back and look at. And I'm thinking maybe after today, a lot of people who listen to this will certainly go back and listen and watch some of the topics we are going to tackle today. So, came up with 5 off the top of my head that we're going to sit here and give a little discussion about. And you let us know in the chat room and obviously on the comments here as we will be posting this on YouTube eventually as well. All right, Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, are you ready?
Ready to go.
Okay, so fans listening at home, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to go ahead and lead us in, talk a little bit about the topic, and then clearly we'll go back and forth. This first one to me is a very, very big deal. One of the biggest things, okay, when my family got cable, all right, it was right, ironically enough, because we never had cable growing up, we were poor. So one of the first times we had enough money to get cable for a couple summers just happened to be right when the NWO was a very big thing, like a huge thing. The NWO, the New World Order, Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash. And Hulk Hogan at this time, guys, was seen as the biggest villain in sports. Like he was numero uno evil. Sting was the franchise of WCW, and they made this build where Sting didn't wrestle for 16 months. So if you could figure your top guy never even wrestles, okay, 16 months go by and he's still voted the most popular wrestler in the world. People are Sting crazy. I mean, I'm telling you, this is the ultimate good versus evil. Everything sets up for Starrcade 1997. I remember saving my money so I could buy it. I mean, this was going to be clearly the biggest payoff in wrestling history. It was that huge. And it was a sure thing, everybody thought, that Sting would win the world title from Hulk Hogan. Good would conquer evil. Everybody would get their happy ending. Well, what happened was the match comes down to the end. Hogan drops the leg. 1, 2, 3. With that cadence, referee Nick Patrick hits the mat 3 times. 1, 2, 3. 3, exactly like that. Hogan wins. Nobody knows what the hell's going on because it's not what anybody expected. Bret Hart runs down, says, "No, no, no, no. It's a fast count. It was a fast count. It doesn't count. Redo it." Obviously, Sting wins. The crowd still cheers, but everybody at home, what did we just see? Number one. And then number two, why did it happen? Mike, I'm going to let you bat lead off. I know you just got some information a couple days ago about Bischoff. Tell us everything you know about this subject and why you believe things went down that night the way they did.
Well, let me start off by saying it's the New World Organization, brother. I still love that initial promo that Hogan cut. Instead of the World Order, he said New World Organization. I don't know why I still think that's hilarious.
Yep.
But
No, that's very true. Very true. Yes.
from my understanding, now I listened to all of Conrad Thompson's. Well, not all of them. I listened to 83 weeks. Conrad Thompson is the son-in-law of Ric Flair, and he does
Correct.
who knows how many different podcasts. It's like 7, 8, 9. I don't even know. But I listened to 83 weeks. I listened to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard and a few other ones. And one of the topics that Conrad and Eric Bischoff had on 83 Weeks was Starrcade 97. And for the longest time, Eric Bischoff would not give a straight answer onto why there was such a botched ending with um, the match between Sting and Hogan. Like you said, it had an incredible build up. I don't even think Sting said anything on WCW for like a year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he just pretty
He
much, for the most part,
he
just
didn't
hung
speak
out
a
in the
word.
rafters. Right.
Right. Yeah, he didn't speak a word at all. And Mike, on top of that, and I know you're gonna get into it in a second, not only did he not speak, but he changed his look. And I'm sure everybody who's familiar with this would know that. He went from being the surfer Sting, really loud, blonde spiked hair, all that stuff, fancy, what am I looking for here? Bright face paint to the dark kind of crow look. So yeah, you're right. He changed everything and became, who could you say could become the most popular wrestler in the world and you don't speak for 16 months? That's how big it was.
Right. And to just sidestep a little bit, shout out to and rest in peace, Scott Hall, because Scott Hall is the reason Sting got that character, that change entire in personality, because Scott Hall was so unselfish and willing to help others to better themselves. And that was 100% a Scott Hall idea. Sting has said it himself. Eric Bischoff has said it himself. And ironically, Scott Hall, whose idea it was, tries to play it off like it was no big deal. So rest in peace to the bad guy. But getting back on topic, it was weird, so weird because it was almost like Eric Bischoff was purposely avoiding the real reason to why there was just such a weird ending to it and how they built it up for 12, 16 months, and then they had such a lousy finish to something that should have been pretty easy. And Conrad Thompson alluded to that. It's like, you built this up for this amount of time. You're trying to tell me that you couldn't just had, Sting end it like any other match, put him in you know, the Scorpion Death Block or whatever, just had a clean finish. But you had this weird ending where Nick Patrick supposedly had a fast count, but it wasn't really even fast. You had Bret Hart involved in it when Bret Hart really didn't even need to be involved in it. And recently, it was acknowledged by Sting, and then Eric Bischoff finally felt comfortable acknowledging it that Sting was not in a good place. It seemed like they were kind of unsure with how Sting was going to show up to the event because, once again, Sting himself has acknowledged just now that he was having a lot of issues with pills and alcohol. He was abusing them, and he actually went to rehab, cleaned himself up, and he's had a great career ever since then. But that's pretty much what happened. They weren't really sure um, if they could trust Sting, which sounds weird because anyone that you ever hear talk about Sting, they talk about how he was just such a stand-up guy, a professional, this and that. But I don't think many people are aware just how much Sting was struggling at that time. And like I told you earlier, I really respect Eric Bischoff for never mentioning it because it wasn't his story to tell. And what Sting kind of, said, yeah, this is what was going on. I was struggling with alcohol. I was struggling with pills. Um, I needed to clean up my act. Then Eric felt comfortable kind of piggybacking off of them, like, listen, yeah, this is exactly what happened. I still think the finish was weird because they still ended up giving the title to Sting. So it still was weird, but at least it gave a little bit more clarification of why there was kind of this uncertainty surrounding Sting.
Certainly so. And Mike, you can still hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Good. This makes me nervous. Is the most success we've ever had with Podbean. No, just joking. Listen, here's a couple things on this too. I really like the fact that you mentioned Bret Hart because a big of a Bret Hart fan as I was, he had no business being a part of this ending. And what it did, all of it together, really made him look stupid, quite frankly, right? Because here you have Bret Hart coming out and saying, "Oh, it was a fast count," when the whole world's sitting there saying, "No, it wasn't," like something was seriously screwed up, right? So I think that alone was overbooking, as they talk about, in the industry all the time. There's overbooking, getting too many people involved. That was certainly the case. Now, here's the thing, though. Okay, which first of all, I will agree with you. Yes, it's for Bischoff to hold that circuit as long as he did, and Sting has kind of acknowledged it without really coming out and saying it over the years, that they always say how he didn't come in shape. That's always kind of what they say. He wasn't in shape, right? So
Didn't have a tan.
didn't have a tan, stupid stuff like that. And it's funny because if you go back and watch, it just came out. I mean, it just came out 2 days ago. I literally just watched it yesterday, but it's called Villains, and it's on Peacock, part of the network there. And it tells you, like, they got all these documentaries on the best villains in pro wrestling and whatnot. One of them was obviously done on Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and they talk a little bit about that. But here's the thing, guys. This is the biggest thing, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later with another subject. But Hulk Hogan had creative control more so than anything else, whether Sting came in 100% drug free, alcohol free, built like a tank, tanned, whatever, like a model, it wouldn't have mattered. Hulk Hogan had creative control over his storylines because of the contract he signed. He was allowed to decide the finish of every single match he was in and every storyline he was in. Now, Mike, you could disagree, and that's cool because that's what this show is all about. But I firmly believe, and I love Hulk Hogan, but I firmly believe that Hulk Hogan's ego got in the way of this one. And he probably said, "No, I'm not ready to lose clean in front of the world." I think it's ridiculous. I think he should have just did the job, shut his mouth. They put the belt back on him 3 months later, anyways. So all of it is just very, very frustrating. But after making the fans wait that long, I just feel like they should have gave them the payoff that they deserved. And I'm talking about the fans deserve that payoff. However you felt about, Sting not being in shape or whatever the case may be. Again, I'll say it again. By April, the belt was back on Hogan regardless. So to me, that is a storyline that we could give an entire episode to, and maybe one day we will. I've actually had the blessings of interviewing guys like Bill DeMott, Brian Clark, who was known as Wrath, being a part of WCW at the time, Mickey Henson, who was a referee for them at the time. Quite a few wrestlers I have interviewed on this show who were in WCW at that time, and all of them have said that the creative control and the ego of Hogan, Bischoff just couldn't handle it anymore and started to let him run the show. And I'll make this final point before we move on. All right. I want fans to go back and watch that show. One of the people I spoke with is Raven. Raven was on that card, ended up not fighting. He was supposed to fight Chris Benoit, and it was a huge long build-up. It was Raven versus Benoit, and in the end, they switched it to Perry Saturn. It was then Saturn versus Benoit because the night of the show, Raven himself was too intoxicated to wrestle. So that alone is crazy. On top of that, another huge match that night got canceled last second with Kevin Nash. It was supposed to be Kevin Nash versus the Big Show, and the Big Show was supposed to job to, I'm sorry, Kevin Nash was supposed to job to the Big Show, and he chose not to last second, allegedly faked a heart attack, said he was having anxiety and couldn't wrestle. So as a wrestling fan, paying your hard-earned money, and this show was 3 days after Christmas. Go check the date, guys. 3 days after Christmas, my sophomore year of high school, I'll never forget it. 1997 going into 1998, three headliners didn't pan out the way anybody thought. Raven didn't want to wrestle, Nash didn't want to wrestle, Hogan didn't want to do business. And I think those three things combined began the downfall of WCW. And a lot of people would admit to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. To, to me, the whole Hogan thing is has always been weird to me because it's always what's the famous saying that doesn't work for me, brother, is what he would say allegedly. Um, I just don't understand because he was clearly a villain. Like everyone knew that. NWO, they were the cool villains, but still, you were in the eyes of everybody a villain. And you're talking about losing clean to WCW's hottest babyface. How I don't understand why or how he thought that would negatively affect him. It to me, it just completely ruined that 12, 14, 16 month buildup that was the hottest ticket in wrestling. At that point,
Of all time.
WCW was killing uh, WWE, WWF at that time.
Yep,
Like it
absolutely.
was not even close.
Because of
And
that
go ahead.
storyline. And you're 100% right, Mike, because of that storyline, because everybody wanted to see that payoff. It was WCW was light years ahead of WWF at that time, and then the NWO forced the WWF to get rid of that squeaky clean, toy image of wrestling garbage men and wrestling dentists and wrestling clowns, and switch to DX and Nation of Domination and things of that nature. You're 100% right. They were crushing WWF because of that. And this was, I think they got too cocky, felt like they could screw with the fans, do whatever they wanted. Finally, they had enough.
Yeah, it really and the whole Brett Favre, geez, Hart's involvement was just really odd to me because what did he really what did he bring to that match? Honestly,
Nothing.
oh,
Nothing.
he's here to right a wrong because he knows how it feels because of not to jump ahead, but the Montreal Screwjob, and it's like at that no one's thinking about that. No wrestling fan is thinking about Bret Hart and the Montreal Screwjob during this match. Like it was just so unnecessary.
And what's funny about that is Hogan's ego made Bret Hart look like a schmuck. So, ironically enough, here we go as we transition, beautiful segue, into topic number two of the podcast tonight, and that is the WrestleMania IX finish. Yet another time, and this would have been in '93, so about 4 years prior. So 4 years prior, almost really almost five, but regardless, April of 1993. I was just watching this last night. Bret Hart was supposed to beat Yokozuna and retain the WWF title at WrestleMania IX. Bret Hart was the face of the new generation, and yes, Shawn Michaels was too. And we're gonna get to that in a bit, but at that time, Bret Hart was your world champion. Shawn Michaels was your intercontinental champion. Vince McMahon was fresh off the steroid trials. You're still in the midst of them, trying to put the belt on smaller guys, more technical wrestlers, and that's what they were doing. WrestleMania 9, again, I'll say it again, was supposed to finish with Bret Hart as the world champion, Shawn Michaels as the intercontinental champion, right? What did we get instead? A 500-pound Yokozuna, pretty much squashing Bret Hart with the help of Mr. Fuji. Hulk Hogan runs out, somehow, some way saves the day, challenges Yokozuna, the new champion, all of 28 seconds to a title match. The match goes maybe 8 seconds. He pins him, leg drop, the whole deal. Suddenly, a 4 or 5 month build of Bret. Again, I'll say it again. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, the Steiner brothers had showed up. These smaller, more technically sound wrestlers were supposed to then carry the company. Hogan shows up, everything changes. Now, Mike, I know you were a youngster when that went down, but I'd have to believe you've read about it, you've seen it on the network, you've heard about it. 4 years prior to Starrcade, there was that. Why do you feel that went down? Because Hogan would then drop the belt back to Yokozuna 3 months later, and then never came. Well, he didn't. And then he would leave WWF completely, not come back for 10 years. What went down that night? how badly did Bret Hart get screwed by, again, Hogan's ego taking over?
So I blame Vince McMahon and Hogan equally in this situation because I feel like Vince kind of screwed Bret um, himself in this situation as well. So this is allegedly the mindset behind this. So from listening to Bruce Pritchard, he has stated that they wanted Vince McMahon wanted Hogan to have the title because after WrestleMania they were going to go on a European tour, which is something that they always do. They go on a European tour after WrestleMania. At least in those days, I don't know if they still do or not. You would know much better than I do.
Oh, they
But
do before the Rona, so they'll probably go back this year. But yeah, every single year, they would do that. Yep, that's true.
so the idea was we want Hogan. This is going to be his farewell tour. We want him to do the European tour as a champion. They're going to love it. We're going to bring in a lot of money. It's going to because at that time you have much better memory than I do at this point. Just going off of video and podcasts and this and that. You were actually living it. I was what 4 years old.
Unfortunately, yes, I was old enough to watch it live. I will admit, my gray hairs cannot cover up that truth. That is
Oh,
correct.
jeez. Well, business wasn't that great then, and they thought that they'd be able to get a boost in business having Hogan do his farewell tour as the champ for this European trip. So that's how Bruce Pritchard kind of sold it. But Conrad challenging him said, well, doesn't make any sense because Hogan didn't even end up going on that European trip. Yoko ended up working with Jim Duggan at the time. So it's just like, so what
Yep.
what happened there? He's like, oh no, he was there, and yes,
No, it wasn't.
Hogan did end up going on a European trip in July,
Yeah.
and he wasn't even the champ. So it's just
Nope.
like, okay, so what happened here? To me, this is what happened. Hogan sold Vince McMahon on the idea of him being a champion, doing his farewell tour, and helping business that way. Vince, in turn, went to Bret and said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." Blah blah blah. Hogan pulled, well, I don't really want to do this anymore, so I'm just
Mhm.
going to drop it back to Yoke, and that's what happened. So I think that the original idea was we're going to give the belt to Hogan. He's going to go on this tour, blah, blah, blah. We're going to get a bunch of money, and then we're going to have Hogan drop it back to Bret.
Right, at
Hogan did
SummerSlam
not,
in Detroit.
exactly. Hogan did not want to work with Bret because I really do feel like he didn't see Bret as box office, and that's why he didn't want to work with him. That's my opinion on it.
No, and I agree. And the funny thing about this too, and as we sit here and talk, I really should keep more notes. I'll go back and listen to this because as we're talking, I'm having a million more ideas for future episodes already pop in my head. One of which is why didn't Lex Luger work out in the WWF? Because here's what happened, folks. So Mike hit it on the head. The original plan, again, was once it had switched and went to Hogan, first and foremost. So it switches, it goes to Hogan. The original plan was for Bret to win the King of the Ring like he did in June and get all this momentum going and then win it back in Detroit. And that was supposed to be Hogan's farewell match with the WWF. He was going to go do movies. He was going to continue with Thunder in Paradise, all that stuff. So, and by the way, that's why Hogan couldn't go on that initial European tour right after WrestleMania because he was literally filming Thunder in Paradise like in those exact moments. I'm watching it now like he wasn't even on Raw after that or even before that because that's all he was doing. So that being said, though, so now Vince McMahon, and this is not a subject we're going to dive into tonight, but one further on, I think is fascinating, is that all of a sudden he's screwed. Okay, because Bret Hogan's gone after the King of the Ring. Now he's shuffling. So what does he do? He takes Lex Luger, a guy who never got over at all in WCW as a face, always as a villain. Here he is as a narcissist, and he's starting to gain some momentum as a villain, as a heel, as they call in wrestling terminology. And all of a sudden, he's like, "What do I do? What do I do?" He turns Lex Luger into the ultimate American hero, which really went over like a wet fart in church. I mean, it just bombed, right? So Lex Luger then had all this try to get the momentum, the Lex Express tour, all these things, and it never had that authentic feel to it. And here we go a year later, almost well, exactly a year later, WrestleMania 10, Vince McMahon has to admit all of his mistakes, takes the belt off of Yoko, puts it back on Bret after all of that. So certainly something there. I mean, again, Bruce Pritchard, with him still working so closely to Vince McMahon, Mike, I think he's got to be real careful sometimes. As opposed, if you go back and listen to the earlier episodes of Something to Wrestle With, the name of his show, right? If you listen to some of
Mhm.
the earlier episodes of that podcast, that's when Bruce wasn't working for the WWE. Like he had nothing to do with them, and he lets a lot more slip than he kind of does now. Now, like further in, he's a little bit more close to the vest. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. But I do think because I can't remember if Bruce was working there when he did that specific podcast or not. I don't remember off the top of my head. But there are some things I think Bruce purposely avoids. I really do think that that was the original plan, but then Hogan changed it, and I think Vince knew that Hogan had no intention of dropping the belt to Bret, and that's why I say Vince ended up screwing Bret there too, because he
Y-
told him like, yeah, he's going to drop it to you at SummerSlam.
Yep.
No big deal,
And
but it never happened.
and another urban legend. Now, this one I cannot verify. I don't know. I wasn't there, but something I've read in numerous outlets, and I'm led to believe this is true. Quite frankly, a lot of the original plan for WrestleMania 9. Now, what they were going to do after that, I have no idea. But one of the original plans was Ultimate Warrior um, challenging Bret Hart for the title at WrestleMania 9. The original plan, and I've heard this from numerous sources, was Ultimate Warrior winning the Royal Rumble that year, going on to challenge Bret and losing. And when Ultimate Warrior he got fired because he was no showing, and then he got caught with roids and everything else. They fired him a week before Survivor Series, ironically enough, in Cleveland, which led to what's it called? Mr. Perfect all of a sudden turning, from a heel manager to a face and joining Macho Man and all that stuff. But that's what happened. So when that happened, McMahon was really like in trouble because suddenly Yokozuna, who Yokozuna had been with the WF 2 months, if that, all of a sudden you got this new guy, Yokozuna, winning the Royal Rumble. You got Hulk Hogan coming back out of nowhere. So you look at how zany some of the things were with WrestleMania 9, and that's why, because that original plan. I mean, also you look at everything. Ric Flair left out of nowhere, right? Ric Flair's 1 year contract ran out. He wanted to go back home down south. So Ric Flair leaves. Ultimate Warrior gets fired. And next thing you know, again, you're pushing Yokozuna out of nowhere. Yokozuna's coming back, and everything kind of got schmucked up there a little bit. So that certainly has a lot to do with it too. Mike, before we move on to our third topic, I'm just curious. Have you ever heard that about that Warrior thing? That Warrior was actually supposed to main event WrestleMania 9 with Bret?
Yeah, I have heard that, but you know, you've talked to more people, obviously, and I'm pretty sure you read up more on stuff like that than I do. So I had heard that, but I didn't know how valid it really was. But just kind of going back for a quick second as well, and this is another reason why I think Vince kind of screwed Brett too. We all know Vince is not a he is not a big fan on face versus face championship matches,
Correct.
and I feel like He also didn't see the box office in that. I'm not saying he didn't believe in Brett or he believed more in Hulk. I think he just did not think that that was a money making match. And do you remember this? I This sounded so familiar when I heard it, and I don't know if it was ever actually advertised or if maybe like the poster or something got out and it just kind of floated around the internet or something. But I kind of it kind of sounds familiar to me. But do you remember like a I don't know if it was a commercial or like a poster or something where it was kind of Hulk and Brett kind of having like this tug of war with the World Championship belt? Does that ring any bells to you?
No,
Okay,
no,
so
I can't say it does. I do remember seeing a meme There was like they let it slip of a promo. Like you said, they do those promo posters, and the one I remember seeing again was Bret Hart versus Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania IX with because they had the Caesar's Palace backdrop, and it was like a cartoon image of both of them. But I saw that one. I do not off the top of my head remember that other one with Hogan and Bret.
Well, allegedly, that was something that I don't know if it was filmed, if it was an idea, what it was, but that was allegedly uh, going to be a buildup, and they had did some sort of photo shoot or something along the lines of Brett and Hulk fighting over like this tug of war with the championship belt.
Interesting.
And yeah, I just think that Hulk ended up, screwing Vince and Brett and backing out of his deal. And Vince didn't like the idea of having Hulk versus Brett as a baby face SummerSlam championship match, and he also knew that Hulk was not going to do the job for Brett. So I think that Brett really did. And you know me, huge Shawn Michaels fan. The Hitman was never really my guy, but I think Bret Hart has legitimate beef in this situation.
Now, you are on a roll today, my friend, with the segues because you just did it again. Perfect segue yet again. You mentioned Vince screwing Brett eventually. You mentioned Shawn Michaels, the trust issues there. So here we go now. Beautiful, perfect segue into this next topic we were going to tackle today. I'm not going to go too deep into the background on this because if you don't already know about the Montreal Screwjob, there's no way in the world you're listening to this podcast. I mean, it just every wrestling fan, whether they've been a wrestling fan for 2 weeks or 25 years knows about this one. Clearly, guys, Bret Hart did not want to drop the title to Shawn Michaels in his home country of Montreal. Vince McMahon, Triple H, Jerry Briscoe, and Shawn Michaels came up with the plan of doing a Fox finish, basically, where Hebner would call for the bell and say that Bret Hart submitted to his own sharpshooter, that Shawn Michaels put him in, regardless of what we saw on TV, and clearly Bret Hart not submitting. Now, here's the thing, guys. We know wrestling's scripted. All right. This was only the second time in wrestling history where we were led to believe, and we're going to get to what you believe here in a second, but we were led to believe that this was really only the second time in wrestling history where the scripted finish didn't go down the way it was supposed to. What I mean by that, all of a sudden, Hebner calls for the bell, and it goes down as the Montreal Screwjob, the most infamous finish in wrestling history. The first one was about 10 years prior with the Fabulous Moolah as the Spider Lady defeating Wendy Richard, and that proved to be a shoot. They call these works and shoots. Work is obviously scripted. A shoot is the real thing. So, based on shoot fighting. Now, going into that night, and really for the last whatever it's been, I don't know, 15, 20 years, myself and everybody pretty much believed that of course that was a shoot. Like, oh my god, like I can't believe Vince McMahon screwed Bret Hart. But Mike, this might shock you. I look at it now, all these years later, here in 2022. So I don't even know what that is. A ridiculous amount of years later, 25 years later. I think it was a work. I think Bret Hart was in on this. They probably sat down, weighed out all our options, and then said, okay. Bret probably said, look, I'm leaving for the WCW. At the very least, I need to go and try to be the biggest baby face of all time. If you screw me over in my hometown, it's going to give me the perfect send off, and I could use that storyline for the rest of my career. And Vince McMahon at the same time probably said, "Well, Bret, you're right." And what that does is it makes me the most really two things for McMahon. Number one, sends a message to the locker room and every single wrestler who would ever work for him again says, "Hey, do it my way or else. I hold all the cards." But number two, help create one of the best characters in wrestling history, the evil Mr. McMahon. Everybody won. It's not Bret Hart's fault that WCW completely screwed up his career and just did nothing with that storyline. But to me, sitting here at 40 years old, someone who's now watched wrestling for 35 plus years of my life, I've pretty much seen it all with wrestling. I look at it now as an adult. I look back at how everybody could have benefited from that. I think it was fake. I think it was fixed. I think it was scripted. I think it was work. What do you think, Mike?
Oh man, ugh, I don't know. I think that was I personally think that was a shoot. There was a few. There was a lot going on in 1997. Obviously, the height of Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, their feud was very much real. There was numerous backstage incidents. I believe there was even a fight between the two where Bret ended up pulling out like a bunch of Shawn's hair, and Shawn ended up having a hissy fit and going home saying he quit
Yep,
this
he
and
did,
that.
and you know that, Jerry Lawler was on the toilet during that? It happened in the bathroom. Jerry Lawler loves to tell that story. He was actually trying to, have a moment there in the bathroom all to himself, and he said, all of a sudden, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels come rumbling in, and I guess Bret Hart just beat the crap out of him and ripped, like, a huge chunk out of his hair. But I can't even imagine having to be a part of that.
Yeah, that had to have been wild. But another reason why I think it was a shoot too is if you think back, what would this have been? 95, I believe, when Medusa left the
Oh, yeah, December
WWF.
'95, throws the
Yeah,
title in the trash can.
yes. I really do think that Vince was afraid that Brett was going to leave the company with the belt. He did not want a similar situation happening there because I think Brett really was upset that Vince wasn't able to live up to the contract that he had just given him, which wasn't it like a 20-year deal, like for an
Yeah.
insane amount of money. I
20
don't
20
remember.
year 20 years, a ridiculous amount of money at that time. Yep, and it was the first, of its kind guaranteed contract.
Yes, and like I said, there was just a lot going on at that time. Like I just can't. It's hard for me to think that it was a work, but I can understand if people do think that. But I just, if it was a work, I really don't think Sean was in on it.
You know
If
what
it was a
always
work,
bugs
I
me?
think what?
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
I
no,
was
I
just gonna
mean,
say. Oh no, I was just saying if it was a work, I think only three people knew about it. I think it was Vince, Brett, and Briscoe. Those are the only three I think knew about it. If it really was a work.
yeah, and if it really was a work and he never told Shawn Michaels, I mean, my god, did he settle him with some serious guilt to have to live with the rest of his life, which Shawn Michaels has said on numerous documentaries. I mean, it's brought him to tears, the guilt that he had over that. So, who knows at this point, right? Like you said, I think there's only two people in the world who know, maybe three. Again, Jerry Briscoe, Vince McMahon, Bret Hart. You hit it right on the head, right on the head. But they all had so much to gain from the result of that. Um, you know, my biggest reason why, again, as an adult, is because what looking back on it, 2020 is always, they say what hindsight is always 2020. But looking back on it, they just had so much to gain, number one. But number two, if Bret Hart was that passionate about not losing in his hometown, not losing to Shawn Michaels, all that stuff, right? Why in the hell would he have been okay with letting Shawn Michaels put the sharpshooter on him or any submission move? Why? Like, stupid. Like, Bret Hart cannot be that stupid to think like, oh, there's no way they're gonna screw me. I would have said when they lay out those matches, and there's a phenomenal documentary about this called Wrestling with Shadows, or Wrestling in the Shadows, I think it is. I own it. Tremendous documentary about the entire incident with Bret Hart. And I think that when they were laying out that match, maybe it was edited out, but that he never discussed like, okay, you can't put me in any kind of submission hold because I don't want to get screwed. A fast count, a guy could kick out. Like it's simple. You see clear as day. But just kind of wild. But that's something that I don't think, and we got one, and we got a whopper of one coming up here at the end with Macho Man and Stephanie. We're gonna get to in a little bit here, but kind of like that one, I don't think we're ever gonna find out the truth. So I think it's easier for us now as wrestling fans to be like, oh yeah, the Montreal Screwjob, it was definitely a shoot. The whole thing was real. Look what happened. I mean, we do agree with that. That I mean, it's been dug up enough times that at this point we're all kind of just happy with that being a part of wrestling lore.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, that and Starrcade, those are probably the two. Starrcade '97. Those are probably like the two stories that people cling to the most. I actually I can see why Brett would agree to being put in the sharpshooter, though. I don't think I really feel like Brett was a little bit naive. I really think that he couldn't see a situation where Vince would screw him, which I think is just dumb. I don't know what he thought was gonna, how he thought the title was gonna be taken off him if it wasn't there. But as you know, Canadian wrestlers in Canada were superheroes, and they were the face, and the American wrestlers were the villains. And I think HBK putting Brett in the sharpshooter in that situation got him a ton of heat, a ton of heat. And I think that really that's something that Brett I believe thought would go over really well. And the one thing I can say why I could see why it was a work is the whole Brett being mic'd up and the um, whatever the company was that was doing that documentary or whatever.
Right.
That did seem a little convenient at the time. I mean, yeah, we're going to shoot all this stuff um, at a Survivor Series, and just so happens you're going to get screwed like no other wrestler has ever been screwed before. So I can see that, but I still think that it was a shoot.
All right, fans, as we roll through here, the initial Wrestle Room podcast, your host, myself here, Vince McKee, along with Mike Rodgers, and we're having a good time here. A couple more topics to go. If you want to join us, if you want to call in, please do so. Podbean offers that special feature here with live shows. We'd love to take advantage of it. Just go ahead, hit the call in button or that little, I think that you can see like a head with a little plus sign next to it. Click on that, and we'd be happy to get your opinion on any one of the first three subjects we've already spoken about. In case you're just joining us, those certainly entail Starrcade 1997. Why did the ending go down the way it did with Hogan and Sting? Clearly, number two, the WrestleMania IX finish. Yet again, there's Hulk Hogan in that one with Bret Hart. Why did all that occur? And then you just heard us now discuss the Montreal Screwjob. So again, always feel free to call in and join the show. Mike, this next one, I call it Mike Rodgers original. And the reason why I do that is because I never heard anybody bring this up until we met. You brought this up, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit. Now, we know with concussions, guys like Daniel Bryan, and even really neck surgeries, guys like Edge, there's no timetable on that. You could leave for a year, or like Edge, you could leave for 10 years. Certain bones in the body don't heal. Anytime you're messing with the spine or the brain, and I tell my kids this all the time, and my little girls love to wrestle, but I tell them, listen, you got to be careful because anything you do to your spine or your brain is so unpredictable, and you can be paralyzed or dumb the rest of your life because of this, right? Shawn Michaels following WrestleMania 14 had such a bad back. I mean, excruciating back pain every single day. I can understand it. I have two discs in my back that are, they call them slip discs, a pinched nerve. I've lived with it for about 16 years. It happened right when I met Emily. I fell off a ladder. I've been in unbelievable pain every day for 16 years. It's something I've learned to live with, but I have a desk job. I'm not a professional wrestler. So you came to me, we were talking wrestling one day and you said, Vince, do you realize that Shawn Michaels was wrestling and training wrestlers shortly after WrestleMania 14? It wasn't that long after. And yet the WWF portrays some image like he was almost a cripple for 4 years, all of a sudden found religion, which I'm glad he did, but it was, Shawn Michaels couldn't do anything for about 4 years, and all of a sudden he's back. So, Mike, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think the true story is? The real reasons as to why Shawn Michaels took almost 4 years off of wrestling in what would have been the late 90s into the early 2000s?
All right, so like I've said, I am a huge Shawn Michaels fan. He is my all-time favorite wrestler. To me, there is no one better in the ring than Shawn Michaels. That being said, I think his injury was vastly exaggerated. I do believe he got injured or he got hurt during the Royal Rumble against the Undertaker. I think that when he did the bump and he hit the casket, I think he did cause some sort of damage to his back. I don't think it was as nearly as severe as it was portrayed. I feel like at that point, Shawn was probably at the height, not probably, he was at the height of his alcohol and pill abuse. He was having a crappy attitude because Razor and Diesel were now in WCW as Hall and Nash, and they were killing um, the WWF at the time. And I think that he was kind of pissed off because they were wrong with this new hot baby face. Some of you may know him as Stone Cold Steve Austin, who just went on to be probably the biggest superstar in WWE slash F history. I'm not sure if there was anyone as hot, got as hot as quickly as Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I think
Correct.
all
I
of
would say
that,
The Rock is a very close second, but that's probably one of the most debatable topics ever. But yeah, at that time, I don't think anybody ever rose the way Austin did, who'd been
yeah,
around for years and years. People don't realize that Stone Cold was in the business in the mid to late '80s, and that was 1998. But yeah, go ahead, I'm listening. But yeah, you absolutely
yeah, I think the combination of all those led to Sean just sitting out for 4 years. And there's also an interesting there's an interesting twist to this. So I'm sure you know this, Vince. We actually probably have talked about this, and it's just slipping my mind. Sean stayed on the payroll for those 4 years he was gone. Vince refused to release him because there was this thought that, oh, he's just, as soon as we release him, he's just going to jump to WCW and go hang out with Nash
correct,
Hall and the boys. And
correct, and that would have been the death nail of WWF.
absolutely, because at that time, like Shawn Michaels was looked at as, if not the best, one of the top 3 to 5 in ring performers in all of wrestling. He was that good. And if you watch that WrestleMania match with Austin, it's not nearly as good as a match Sean could. Like Sean could have a 4-star match in his sleep. But for someone that had such a bad back, I don't care what type of pain medication you're taking, still the bumps that he took in that match, there's no way that he even performed like that. Like you could see when he dropped the elbow off the top, like he was in pain and whatnot. And I do believe he was injured to a certain extent, but I really believe that it was exaggerated because not even 2 years, it's probably about a year and a half roughly later, he's having a hardcore match with one of the guys that he helped train at his little promotion that he had. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head,
Yep,
but there's no way. And then the way he came back against Triple H
like a
and
million dollars.
2002, that was not someone that did nothing for 4 years. Shawn Michaels showed up, faced Triple H at SummerSlam, right?
Hmm.
2002 SummerSlam,
Oh yeah, and
and
phenomenal match, phenomenal shape. He looked like a yeah, he looked good.
he like wasn't blown up at
No,
all.
no, it was like a 25-minute match.
Oh yeah, it was a classic match. So to me, I just think that it was a combination of all those things that led to Sean just being like, "Screw it, I'm just gonna sit at home. I got all this money. I'm married now. I'm just gonna drink and do pills and screw you,
and
Vince."
and that's what happened, and because again, it's funny because you mentioned it to me, right? And I never thought anything of it, and maybe it's again, maybe it's my age, I don't know, but the older I get, I think the wiser I become, and I look back at stuff again with 2020 vision. A couple things you said make a world of sense. Number one, he was under contract, he was getting paid to sit home. If he leaves at that time, and look at what happened instead, but if he leaves at this time and goes to WCW and joins the NWO, it's over, game over, match done, right? Because then he could have ran the Wolfpack, Hogan would have ran the Black and White. It would have been just out of this world good. Bret Hart was over there at that point. They could have played off that storyline. I mean, multiple things. That's number one. Number two, What did he do for 4 years? Well, the first 3 years, he found drugs and alcohol to be his daily vice, right? And I get the pain atmosphere of it all. I really do. Because if you're dealing with pain every day, I could absolutely see how you're going to get hooked on painkillers. That doesn't shock me one bit. So, but what did he do? He fell in love, met the Nitro girl, had the kid, had multiple kids. Eventually, was able to turn his life around. To me, that in itself is a just an amazing story. But I think you're right about all this. Then, on top of that, guys, I'm telling you right now, as somebody who lives every day with a bad back, you don't just bounce back from it ever. Like you're done. The rest of your life, you have a bad back. There's no coming back from that, right? Now, listen, I feel, and people can disagree, and that's cool, whatever. I actually think the Shawn Michaels, Mike, who came back in what would that have been? Now let me date my brain here. 2003, 2002, 2002. Okay. So if you look at SummerSlam 2002 when he makes his comeback match, he then goes on a streak of unbelievable matches, and I feel did the best work of his career between 2002 and 2010 when he retired at WrestleMania 26. That 8-year stretch of Shawn Michaels is better than any other 8-year stretch of his career. I'll give you the numbers right now, starting with that SummerSlam match. Then he wins the inaugural Elimination Chamber match. Then he steals the freaking show at WrestleMania 19. And fans, if you want to go watch a gem, pull up WrestleMania 19. Do not skip a match. WrestleMania 19, in my opinion, is the second greatest WrestleMania ever. Phenomenal. He was on that card with Chris Jericho. So look it up. HBK versus Jericho, WrestleMania 19. Just grab some popcorn and a cold cola and enjoy. Phenomenal. WrestleMania 20 is in the match on the card. The best match on the card. Him, Triple H, Benoit tear down the main event, WrestleMania 20. WrestleMania 21, Shawn Michaels again versus Kurt Angle. One of the greatest matches of all time, in my humble opinion. WrestleMania 21,
Amazing match.
Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle. Oh, you hit it. Amazing match. WrestleMania 22, right? You think he's going to get a night off? Nope. He's in there with Vince McMahon. Should have been a joke of a match. This is why I like Shawn Michaels. Used to hate the guy. But after he pulled off what he did at WrestleMania 22, it's impossible to hate him. WrestleMania 22, he goes out there with Vince McMahon, who's about as stiff as a board. They tear down the house. Phenomenal match. WrestleMania 23, same deal yet again. This time with John Cena. Main event in WrestleMania 23. WrestleMania 24, yet again. Ric Flair's final match. And then to me, WrestleMania 25 is the greatest match in wrestling history. The absolute greatest match ever, WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. So to complete Mike's point, and I'll let him get the final say on this point, but look at all that. All right. 8 years of tearing down the house. And his last year, WrestleMania 25 through WrestleMania 26, he did a lot of tag work. He took a lot of months off. He kind of really, really pumped the brakes, slowed it down dramatically. But if you look at that stretch, SummerSlam '02 through WrestleMania 25, my goodness, Mike Rodgers, I don't know if there was a better wrestler on the planet. And that kills me to say it, being the Bret Hart fan that I am, but I don't think there was a better wrestler on the planet during that stretch. No way, no how.
No, and it's crazy because, when Sean came back, he clearly had lost some athleticism. He still was fairly athletic in the early 2000s, 02, 03, but then you started to see his athleticism fade. But what grew in leaps and bounds, his in ring performance, his selling was off the charts. His feud with Triple H was
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous.
Oh,
His
yeah.
his match with Kurt Angle, I mean,
Oh,
talk about a match. If you want to show someone how to sell and how to work a crowd and how to really execute, I can't think of two guys in that time
oh,
frame.
incredible.
And then making Ric Flair at what was he, 60 something years old?
Yep, the WrestleMania
About
24, making
24.
us all believe that Flair might actually win. Yep.
Oh my gosh. And just what he did with Taker, obviously they had the history, but they had not, I don't think they had wrestled um,
No, since
since
he hurt his back.
98. Yeah.
Yeah, since Royal Rumble '98 when he hurt his back. And did you know coming into that, kind of a did you know kind of fact for everybody? Undertaker going into WrestleMania 25 had never beaten Shawn Michaels in a singles match, not once.
I
Incredible in
had
itself.
I had heard that. I'm not sure.
Bad.
Some, some I can't think. Some
Well,
shows that which weren't televised. Um, I feel
th-
like that may not be true, but I have heard that from numerous people.
well, you missed one match that again, which is funny because again, yet again, and I missed it too, but it goes back to Hulk Hogan's ego. And this literally could be the name of this podcast is Hulk Hogan's ego and how it screwed up wrestling. But um, did you know about this one, Mike? Did you know about this? So following WrestleMania 21, right? Hogan's fresh into the Hall of Fame. There's all this goodwill for Hulk Hogan. Okay. Shawn Michaels is coming off that match with Kurt Angle that we both loved. So they wanted to build it up, face versus face, Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam. And did you know that Hulk Hogan went to McMahon and said, number one, if we're gonna have this match, I'm not losing. And Shawn Michaels said, okay, that's fine, I'll do the job. But and then on top of that, he said, nope, Shawn Michaels has to be a heel. I'm not doing face versus face. I need to be cheered, so on and down the line. So Shawn Michaels showed his professionalism and said, fine, I'll do the job, I'll be the heel. Wasn't happy about either. Fans out there, you want to talk about wrestling conspiracies? Go ahead and look into that one. Then pull up that match from SummerSlam 95, which ended up being a phenomenal match because of Shawn Michaels' ability to sell. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Uh,
SummerSlam 2005. I think I screwed that up, but yeah, SummerSlam 2005. He jumps all over the ring. Like I mean, that match with Hogan, he's doing the most selling you've ever seen. He takes a backdrop, folds over twice, and throws himself out of the ring. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
oh yeah,
One,
no, listen,
one because he
that
was
is one
pissed.
of. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I
no,
don't
that
blame
was
him.
a great. I loved. I've done so much research about that specific. Um, um,
That story.
I don't even want to. Yeah, I don't even want to call it a feud. It wasn't a feud, but that was originally supposed to be. They wanted to build it up into a three match kind of feud,
Hmm.
and Hogan was not for three matches. He's like, all right, I'll do two. I beat him here and I beat him there, and it'll be over. It's like, no, like why would you do that? Sean originally wanted to be a hey man, I gotta know who's the better man, me or you?
Right,
Icon
right.
from the '80s versus the icon of the '90s. Good guy versus good guy, which goes back to Vince too, because he does not like face versus face matches with superstars that big. So I feel like Vince kind of nixed that too. And Sean, you are 100% right, did not want to turn heel. Hogan went to Vince and said, "Hey, I want him to be like he was in the late '90s." And Sean was like, "Are you sure he's down for that? Because if he wants me to be like that, I will destroy him on the mic. I will
And he did too
obliterate him."
with the
The
Larry King
Larry
live
King,
thing was
yes,
hysterical. My brother,
yeah,
brother, 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 brother.
oh
Just
yeah. And Bruce Pritchard has acknowledged this too. He
so good.
said every time he went to do a promo or something, he's like, "All right, is Terry good with this?" He's like, "Yeah, Terry's business. Terry's business."
Yep.
And he just destroyed him.
Yep.
And he thought that after that match, he thought that Shawn was kind of making light of the match, but you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as Shawn being Shawn from 1997 and just making an ass of Hogan, but you can also look at it as this way: HBK just doing a classic Hogan match where he's overselling and he is just putting on a performance. To me, Shawn went in there and was like, you know what? You're not going to do business how we should do business. I'm gonna do the job for you, but I'm going to make you look good, but I'm also going to make you look like a fossil as well. I'm going
Yep.
to oversell. I'm going to make it look like a clown show. It's still going to be a good match, but there's going to be times where people are going to question if I'm trying to make you look like a clown or if I'm just trying to sell. And it
Yeah.
was amazing. Sean was, to me, and like I said, I'm biased. Sean was awesome during that match.
Oh yeah, and
Awesome.
he went right back to being a face the next night. The next night on Raw, all of a sudden he's a baby face again, right? So, yeah, certainly worked out. Now, guys, a lot of fun today as we're wrapping up the show here, kind of reaching that hour point. We got one more subject to go. You go ahead, email me, coachvin14 at yahoo.com, or you can tweet at me, SportsKey1, with any future episode ideas. Before we get to this last topic, Mike, where can they find you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Facebook. I am, I believe my name is Michael. Am I Mike or am I Michael on Facebook? I don't even know.
I think you're
But I'm
Michael.
on Facebook. Yeah, I think I am Michael Rogers, Rodgers. I'm also on Instagram, Mr. underscore Rogers 15. And I did delete my Twitter, but I started a new one because it was just, you have to have a Twitter of all the news and whatnot. So I do have a new Twitter, and you can find me at Rogers M521. That is Rodgers like Aaron.
All righty. All right, fans, our final topic of the day here. We are calling this the debut episode. What's called the Wrestle Room podcast for now until we can think of something a little bit more clever. But having a lot of fun. The main subject really today has been conspiracies in wrestling. Why did things go down the way they did? Now, we talked a lot about Bret Hart and we talked a lot about Shawn Michaels. Really, the first two guys to hold the world title and have lengthy reigns with it that weren't massive bodybuilders. Well, that's not entirely true because I want you to go look at the height and weight of one Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho Man Randy Savage was really the prototype for that. I wrote an article last year for Keon Sports, kind of explaining that Macho Man Randy Savage truly was the original Mr. WrestleMania. Shawn Michaels took the ball, ran with it, and never looked back. But if you go back and look at Macho Man, Randy Savage, he truly had some of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history during his tenure there. First one being at WrestleMania 2, last one being at WrestleMania 10. But he was never treated like a legend after he left in October of 1994. So a couple things here for you, Mike. One, Macho Man leaves in October of 1994 with little to no fanfare at all. He went from hosting Raw with McMahon, all of a sudden he's gone. Years later, they never bring him back. He never comes back. It's just done. They start inducting Hulk Hogan into the Hall of Fame, Ric Flair into the Hall of Fame. All these guys, even Bret Hart, for the love of God. So all these guys who kind of screwed over McMahon, left, left the WWF at the time. All these different things, they're welcome back with open arms. There was never anything about the Macho Man until years after his death. Why do you feel that was? The urban legend, quite frankly, is that he had sexual relations with Stephanie McMahon when she was a minor, 16, 17 years old in high school. Vince McMahon found out about it, blew his gasket. As a father of two girls, I could see how that would happen. I would lose my mind. So that's the story. That's the urban legend. What do you think the truth is? Because clearly we're never going to know. Because I don't think Stephanie's ever going to come out and say it now.
Yeah, so for me, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist person, but I will say this: whether or not it happened, I don't know. What I do think is that Vince believed it happened, because why else would it have taken until, what's it, 2015 for Macho Man to be inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Correct.
Uh,
WrestleMania 31 weekend. And he wasn't even the headliner. They made Kevin Nash the headliner, which I'm sorry. I'm not a huge
there's no
Nash fan
way in
regardless, but that's
hell he should have been the headliner.
BS. Absolutely over Macho Man Randy Savage. Are you kidding me? Agreed.
Listen, I'm
Agreed.
a I'm a huge Quick guy. Like, if you're asking me, like, name my guys, it's HBK number one, two, three, four, and five. Then it's Razor, it's Nash, it's X Pac. Like that's my those are my favorite wrestlers. Triple H is
Not
there
only
as
not only
well.
that, but I mean look at some of the headliners, okay? So look at okay, so WrestleMania 23 weekend, your headliners Dusty Rhodes. You got to be an old school wrestling fan, like old school wrestling fan to really know the greatness of Dusty Rhodes. He headlined in 23. Obviously 24 is Ric Flair. 25, I don't even remember all the time. Oh, Austin. Okay, so clearly those two make sense. But look at WrestleMania 26, your headliner. Ted DiBiase was the headliner of your Hall of Fame. Are you kidding me? I mean, just little things like that were ridiculous. But go ahead. Again, I didn't want to cut you off, but yeah, just to kind of round everything about, the people they kept putting in as their headliners over Macho Man were ridiculous. Then he finally gets in, and they put Nash over him. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, because it makes no sense. Think about all the people that have left WWF slash W or WWE and have come back, and Macho Man was never a thought. Never a thought. He wasn't even. I can't even think of a time where his name was mentioned
Nope.
on WWE TV until
Blacklisted.
until his Hall of Fame induction. Like you said, putting that. I'm sorry. I love Kevin Nash. I love Diesel. There is in no world are you putting Kevin Nash ahead of Macho Man in an induction ceremony. There's no way. The only thing that makes sense is that something really nefarious happened and it ruined their relationship. And what else could have happened? Like what else could have happened
Nothing.
besides what is
That's it.
alleged? And like I said, whether it happened or not, I don't know. I'm not going to say it did or didn't. I'm just going to say
Yeah.
I 100% believe Vince believed it happened.
Oh, if there was ever a subject where me and you would have no clue the answer to, I mean, I could sit here, I could talk wrestling with you for, I bet you 10 hours nonstop and not get bored. Like 10 straight hours, I'll give you wrestling talk and I have a good answer for every single question. That is one I have absolutely no earthly idea. But to me, it would make the most sense that yes, something did happen. And you really, I mean, really dig into it. I mean, here's where it gets bizarro world to me. Um, there are so many female talents in the WWE, WWF, WWE, whatever Hall of Fame that I don't feel belong there. I think it's beyond stupid that they're in there, and then Miss Elizabeth isn't. So to me, I think anything Macho Man, right, just sets McMahon off. I think he finally caved to the pressure, like finally had enough. It's like, okay, fine, we'll put him in the Hall of Fame. But again, you never see anything about him. They never have Macho Man Week on the network. Nothing, nothing. Never talk about him. Even to this day, it was like it was like McMahon said, okay, fine, whatever. In 2015, we'll put him in. He won't be the headliner. That's it. So I truly believe something happened because he never blacklisted anybody else. There was rumors too, and then kind of wrap it up with this. There was rumors that in '97, so right before Bret left for WCW, there was a lot of talk about Randy Savage actually jumping ship back to WWF to the point where I guess there was like a meeting about it. They got real close, and then something was revealed. And this is all hearsay and conjecture. Who knows if it's true? But the urban legend, I guess, is that something got revealed to Vince about Macho Man's relationship with Stephanie, and then that was it. Never spoken about it again. So again, who knows the truth? Really, only two people could tell you the truth, and one of them is dead. That I
Right.
don't.
And what's
Prettier
interesting to
way to
me
say that.
too, no, I mean it's just the facts, but something else that's just interesting to me too is how do rumors typically get started?
Jealousy.
Jealousy, or there had to have been some sort of, maybe something happened and it got exaggerated, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Who in their right mind, like, would just make something up like that just to start a rumor? Like, how would that even start? There had to have been some sort of validity to that situation. Like I said, I'm not saying it actually happened, but could a few of the boys have seen Randy and Stephanie maybe being a little bit flirtatious, and that started the rumor. And then Vince heard about it, and it's like, oh well, you know, not in my house. This ain't happening. And then blacklisted Randy or Macho Man. Yeah, it could have been something where they were just a little flirtatious, and rumors started spreading, and Vince believed it was true, and it led to that. But I
Yeah.
don't think this was just some situation where uh, whoever, I don't even know. Honestly, I have no idea who even started it or how it originated, who first gave the inkling that there was something there.
No
But
clue.
I just can't see one of the boys just coming up with that off the top of his head, like, oh yeah, let me just start some crap right here. Because wrestlers, like, they love to stir the pot. They love to, prank and whatnot. But that's just something you don't joke about.
No, and if it was anybody who did it, and again, guys, I'm a huge Hulk Hogan fan. I mean, you probably never guess it by listening to this podcast because I'm about to badmouth him for about the umpteenth time. But and I love Hogan, I do. But it wouldn't shock me if it was him because who did Hogan have the biggest rivalry with? Personal, like on a, in personal, like they hated each other. Macho Man. They went from being best friends to hated rivals, the best friends to hated rivals again. So, and we all know that even when Hogan was with WCW, he was still talking with Vince. They still had a friendship there. They've both admitted to it. So yeah, that by no means would surprise me if that ever came out one day that in fact it was Hogan, kind of filling McMahon's head with that kind of crap. So who knows? I don't know if I believe it as much. I mean, Randy Savage cut a promo shortly before he died, about I don't know, a year or two before he passed away, calling out Triple H and talking trash about Triple H. And he does say in that promo, go ahead and YouTube, it's pretty wild. But he does say she was mine before she was yours. So he puts it out there. He really, I mean, it's out there. But is he just saying that to stir the pod? Was he just, who knows, coked out of his mind? Lord only knows. But crazy stories there. But Mike, all this stuff, man, whether it's true, false, work or shoot, whatever the case may be, this is something we've wanted to do for a long time. And because it went so well, I had so much fun. I'm going to hold you to it that we do this again down the road.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's so many different topics to talk about. I mean, wrestling is the one form of entertainment that just never stops giving. There's always something to talk about.
No, it's so true. And being a student of the game like you are, and myself, just to me, it's so much more fun to break down the history than what because the current product is just not very good anymore, compared to the way it used to be. So definitely a lot of fun. Fans, again, reach out to me on Twitter, SportsKey1, or email me here, CoachVin14 at yahoo.com. Want to thank my co-host here today, Mike Rodgers. Wish you the best, man. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Cannot wait for that wedding. Looking forward to it. I'm going to shine up my shoes real nice. Just got my shirt back from the cleaners. So we are definitely good to go. Mike, any last comments for the fans before we send it home?
No, I got nothing. I'm just excited for the next time we're able to get together and talk some more classic wrestling. And like I said, or like you said, I should say, really excited for the wedding here in about 33 days and looking forward to letting loose and having some fun.
Yep, man. Just say the right name on the altar, and everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, don't worry. I won't be calling asshole or anything like Sabrina or anything. We don't got to worry about that. I don't think I would make it to the reception if that happened.
I I am teasing you. I'll give you one quick story here as we send off the fans. I'll keep it nice and short. My wedding day was in the middle of August, actually towards the end of August, August 20th of 2011. Hot as hell that day. I'll just say it. We're up on the altar. I'm sweaty as can be, and I'm emotional as can be. Like, I'll admit, I probably a little teary eye going on. And yeah, so we got these nice tuxedos on and everything, Mike, and everything looks good. Not thinking anything of it, but my nose starts to drip a little bit. I got the sweat going. I get a little nervous. I forget, and you've known me well enough now to know this. I always have a hanky in my pocket at all times. Always have my hanky in my pocket. Not thinking anything of it. They're all bandanas. They're all old used bandanas. Pull one out, bright red. Go to wipe the sweat off my forehead. Everybody in the entire church starts laughing. I mean, uncontrollable laughter in the middle of the ceremony. And I can't figure out why. Didn't think twice about it. All of a sudden, it hits me like a ton of bricks as I'm holding this bright red hanky slash bandana out on the altar as people are snapping pictures left and right. So just the crazy shit, the crazy stuff that happens the day of your wedding. Don't overthink it because at the very worst, or at the very best, I should say, you're giving people stories to tell the rest of their life.
Oh yeah, and if you can't be laughed at by those you care about and love you, then who can laugh at you? So hey, I'm prepared for it all, good, bad, or in between. Like if it happens, it happens. It's gonna be a great day.
Absolutely, my friend. All right, that will do it. Whether it's This Is Us, whether it's NBA basketball, or whether it is the Wrestle Room podcast, Mike Rogers, my man, he knows how to bring it. So that is all for today. For Mike Rogers, I am Vince McKee. Thank you again for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.